Hello everybody, James here, and it's WSI, but it is a particularly special WSI because we've got an announcement, and the announcement is we have Stevie Richards with us, and we are happy to announce a new show together, and I'm going to let Stevie take it from here.
Thank you, James. Yes, the show is creatively going to be titled The Stevie Richards Show. We really worked hard on coming up with that name, but I'm very excited.
Keep it simple, stupid, isn't it?
You're talking directly to me right there with the stupid part. But
I thought you were a Kiss fan.
But yes. What's that?
You're a Kiss fan, aren't you?
I am a Kiss fan. Not as much as the 80s love songs, but hopefully people didn't unsubscribe just from hearing that. But yes, if people are familiar with the Stevie Richards analysis show, more notably because it cuts off after the L in the channel title, which you famously laugh every time you see it, right?
Yep, Stevie Richards Wrestling Anal.
Yeah, I mean, we might have gotten our subscribers, and they might have been like, what is this? This is what I expected. But the Stevie Richards Wrestling Analysis channel will be going away, will be going dormant, and being replaced by this channel, the Stevie Richards Show. And I was just, ever since our first interview that we did on WSI, by the way, if you haven't seen that, check it out. I always thought we had really good chemistry. We kept in touch after the interview, and we always talked and kind of touched on the fact that we might collaborate in the future. We always kind of had that in the back of our minds. And this opportunity, at least in my mind, came up about a month or two ago where we started kind of brainstorming and spitballing different ideas and how to reintroduce the breakdowns, analysis, but more importantly, you and I have extreme OCD when it comes to video and audio production. So what we wanted to do was not create a podcast, but create an actual, at least as close as we can humanly possibly get to a network-produced television show that will come up every week on the YouTube channel. And we're trying to shake things out as far as the date and everything, which I think we actually did kind of tentatively decide on the date that we will launch episode 1.
But 28th of June, we're saying, I believe. So
well, no pressure at all.
Well, the day this interview comes out is going to be the day that the new YouTube channel is debuting. So June the 28th, and hopefully we'll have our first episode out for then.
That would be great. Yeah. So it gives us a lot of time to really iron things out. I think the thing that we really want to hang our hat on with this show, the Stevie Richards Show, or the James Romero Show with Stevie Richards, was my first thing that I pitched, but James shot that down.
Yeah, you're really trying to turn off the subscribers, surely.
We really want to be fan-friendly. We want to make it a fun show, but more importantly than even those, we want to give you a very tight, formatted, segmented TV network experience. So we're really going to go deep into that. Maybe episode 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 might not have that tight of a format, but we are going to work to improve with each and every episode and fulfill our OCD, how would you describe it? Obsessive 2 a.m. wake-up calls to write notes. And I'm already working out, so it doesn't matter. I can write it, but you're the one who wakes up with all these ideas. Long story short, James and I really put a lot of passion in the content creation and really want to create a wrestling show that's different than anything else out there. We're obviously going to talk about news, other stuff, but we have some fun segments where you, the fans, can interact in the comments or send in questions, and we can follow up on that. Did I cover just about everything there?
Pretty much, yeah. I've got a couple more things. So we were talking about this, I think, yesterday while we were describing all these things. I actually posted on Twitter about a week ago. There are so many podcasts over this past year that have really fallen by the wayside. I won't name them all, but there's at least 10 with, name people that have basically just gone within the last 6 months. And we were thinking, well, then how do we make ours better? Instead of just adding a podcast, because what I do is, we do a Zoom call, and then generally with my podcast, they look better than the average one because mine isn't Zoom, mine, is ISO. As you say, and then we splice in the Zoom call thing afterwards. So we try and do the quality thing as best we can. But with Stevie, I've not only met my match as far as quality goes. I mean, I've seen his studio now. It's like mission control. He's got 5 cameras down there. It's the hollow deck. It's everything you could ever wish to be for a studio. So it's putting mine to shame, essentially, as far as quality as well. But so I need to catch up as well. I mean, I've got like an old air conditioner in the background with an empty box that I bought a Super Mario World t-shirt, you know, that kind of thing. I will bring me at my end up to your level as well. So here's something else as well. We're going to get onto another announcement I'm going to make in a second, but also with the Stevie Richards show. This isn't going to be the same as everything every other podcast is basically doing, is pumping out clip after clip after clip and hoping one catches fire. I do the same as well. WSI, I generally post 1, occasionally 2 a day. With Dutch, we generally do 3. Other channels out there that I'm sure you know do up to like 8 in a day, and it gets overwhelming, it clogs up the feed. So instead of doing quantity instead of quality, we're doing quality instead of quantity. We're only going to be putting out a few clips every week, but these aren't going to be just, you know, start at 0, end at 8 minutes, post it, see what happens. These are going to be fully tooled up with everything from graphics to videos to little pop-up facts and that kind of thing. It's going to be tight editing. These are going to be not just clips, these are going to be mini episodes almost, where, and that's not even including the content, where the content is going to be, with Stevie's help, of course, it's going to be more in-depth, more fascinating, more interesting than something that's just off the cuff. If I ask you an off-the-cuff question, you won't have time to prepare for a full 20-minute answer, you know, to cover all bases. Whereas this one,
well, you might be surprised by that.
Well, either way, but we're making sure that basically you're getting your bang for your buck, essentially, with the clips as well as the full episodes. Is there anything else?
I think one thing needs to be pointed out too. It's not going to be so stiff, and it's still going to be organic. Yeah. We don't have a script. I have bullet points of a script in front of me. That's the other thing. We both have.
Look at that.
Yeah, you have it. You're the script master. But I have everything in front of me as well. So we get to help each other out, keep things moving, keep things tight. But it's also going to be discussions, conversations, and literally you just have a topic and then we're going to talk back and forth. The smart board and the annotations, we got to prepare and have the clip or the photos up and be able to switch and have that as tight as possible. But we're working on it. I've done a lot of testing, and man, if we could just bottle up our conversations from the past month, it was almost like a first half was the guide of how not to set up the production, and then we slowly got into how to set up the production. It's been a really fun process, and I'm really looking forward to continuing that process and getting better with you.
Yeah, I hate the word aligned because it's a business speak word, but we are aligned as far as, I think we both said at the exact same time, this is not a podcast, this is a show. This is as close to as we can get it, a broadcast TV show. It's going to be high definition, high quality, both sides. It's going to be everything that every other podcast pretty much isn't. You know, there's a couple of exceptions, of course. I mean, Maven and The Undertaker, essentially. They're the only 2 exceptions. And I'll give them a free plug, why not? But every other one, including with me and Dutch as well, it's a lot more podcast format, a lot looser and that kind of thing. I want to make one more announcement. I'll announce it on this. I will announce it on the Franchise University with Shane Douglas podcast as well. I'm sure a lot of you out there will guess that essentially it's been on hiatus for a while. There's a reason for that, and I'll announce it now that it's going to sadly remain on hiatus. And the reason is Shane's only available on weekends, certain weekends. I'm only available certain weekends, and those weekends getting fewer and further between. Originally what we were doing, we were batch recording, 2 or 4 in a day, and then sometimes it would be 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. One of those kinds of things, if we could align our schedules. There's that word, align, again. But the problem is that we started missing weeks because we couldn't get it together at the same time. Then we started having audio issues for a long time. That was another issue. And basically, it's killed the momentum of the channel to the point where we started posting stuff on it again. And essentially, I was losing money on it because, I actually do pay people. I'd like to think I'm one of the few people who actually pays people for these kinds of things as well. And
you'll never make it as a wrestling promoter.
No, I know. I insist on paying you. Anyway, so I've already spoken with Shane's management. I've already spoken to Shane. He understands. They all understand. And the other thing is people will know. I mean, crikey, most people still don't know my surname on this. I keep my private life private. But I'm having a baby in a couple of months as well. So I already work more than 40 hours in a weekday, and the Shane show was taking up either 3 or 4 weekend days every month to write the scripts and record and research and do the thumbnails and everything like that afterwards. And it's got to the point where it's like, I need some time to myself. But people might be now thinking, I probably missed a couple of points, but with the Shane channel as well, that doesn't mean that the Shane Douglas channel is going away, because there are ideas we're floating around to keep content coming on the Shane Douglas channel as well. So don't unsubscribe. There will be stuff happening there. Shane will also hopefully still be a semi-regular on WSI as well. So it's, there's no fallout with me and Shane over it. Everybody understands. And I hope to have Shane on with us, because I get on with Shane very well, and I know you get on with Shane very well as well, Stevie.
Yeah, Shane is if I can just interject here,
please.
Shane is an absolute necessary voice within the wrestling industry. Also has a lot of knowledge outside the wrestling industry, a lot of life experiences, a lot of things that you can be inspired by, where Shane obviously has spoke very honestly and candidly about his demons, about his pitfalls, about the ups and downs of his career and his personal life. And I have a great deal of respect for Shane. And I want to extend, if there's ever a time that Shane wants to join us and it fits, I would love to have him on the Stevie Richards show and just talk about it. Because Shane, just on a side note too, again, Shane was the first person to give me props publicly as a professional wrestler. As a very young wrestler, Shane requested that he work me on an arena show because of the way I was bumping and selling and making talent look good. This was Steve Richards, before Stevie Richards was even born. And he got on the microphone on his own, not told to do this. And he, in a heel fashion, the franchise fashion, he said, "One day, Steve Richards, you're going to be a star in this business. Not tonight," which is, he had just gone over, "but you are going to be a star in this business." And to this day, in 2024, that pat on the back, that attaboy, or that motivation and inspiration to keep staying in the business and keep the course was because of Shane Douglas. So I want to thank him for that, and hopefully we get to touch base here sooner or later.
Yeah, just to add one more thing with the podcast, some people will be saying, well, how come you're dropping the Shane Douglas podcast for the Stevie Richards show when you've just said, busyness and that kind of thing, which is true. I mean, and it's a very good question, but it also has a very good answer. As I said previously, it was always a weekend thing, and weekdays are really full up for me. The difference is Stevie is as enthusiastic and as capable, if not even more capable than I, of putting together a show, and therefore he's very kindly put more. He's already gone above and beyond, essentially pulling his weight with it. He's contributing to scripts, he's contributing to the technical stuff, he's contributing to post-production as well. So therefore, and he's also very kindly operating on my schedule. So we're doing this where I've got a bit of a lull in a schedule on a Wednesday. It's early Wednesday morning for you still, as we record this. So this is the reason why the Stevie Richards show can happen, whereas the Franchise University show couldn't happen, because as I said before, I have to do all the script writing, and it was a format as well that would require me to watch a show, do research for weeks before and after to come up with like little factoids as well. And then, there are fan questions and everything else to make a bulk amount of scripts, and then the recording would generally take 2 days and then a day for post. It was a lot, and it was always taking up weekend days as well. Whereas with Stevie, as I say before, this is an absolute partnership, and unlike everyone else I've ever worked with, Stevie knows how to operate a camera. as well as everything else.
James from WSI buries wrestling legends. There's the clickbait title.
Dude, well, it's true. I mean,
I'm kidding.
Don Morocco, Dutch Mantel, Shane Douglas, if they pretended to you that they weren't technophobes, then they are lying to you. None of them can operate a Zoom call. Well, the Dutch can. I've taught him well.
Here's a little political advice for you. But you turn around and say, which is absolutely true, by the way, the wrestling knowledge, psychology, and just the connection to the business trumps how to operate an iPhone 15 Pro.
Absolutely. It does do that as well. But so as I say, that's sort of why. And one more thing I'd like to make clear as well is that I did not replace Shane Douglas with Stevie, because I was thinking of cancelling the Shane Douglas podcast because of the reasons I've just said, because back in like March and April, whereas Stevie got in contact with me. I was in Japan, so it must have been May. I'm trying to think when I was there. God,
we talked right before WrestleMania weekend. That was the initial conversation.
Did we?
The first initial conversation was then about I possibly am considering, something I want to talk to you about. You went to WrestleMania, then you went on your trip.
Yeah, I remember. I remember it was in Japan that you messaged me and said. Anyway, so we've had a mutual love fest. We've made the announcements and that kind of thing. So why don't we get into the meat of what we're hoping to show you? What the damn it, it's not a podcast. What the show is going to be all about. We're going to have some news. We're going to have some deep dives. We're going to have some wrestling analytics. And
I'm never going to. Oh, man. I wish somebody stopped me before I came up with that.
And we're also going to have fan questions as well that we will let you know how to get in contact with us on the new channel. I don't know if I'm going to call it with a new email or community board post, whatever it is, we'll make it obvious to you as well. So at the end of this show, the questions are from over a year ago that were leftover questions from the first time that we ever spoke, in fact, as well, for the first interview. But we're going to do the first of our news items. I was sort of looking at the Wyatt family thing, and to be honest, we're already 20 minutes into that thing. If you've got time, we'll get back to it. One thing, and we were talking about so much production between me and you and how we're going to make this a producer's dream as far as all the technology and the HD and going back and forth. But one company that's also gone haywire as far as just improving their production as well since the beginning of the year is WWE. And you watch Raw every week, you watch SmackDown every week as well. And we'll get to Kevin Dunn in a minute. He retired at the end of last year. What have you noticed that are big changes with WWE's production that you'd like to pick up on and that has impressed you?
Well, I think the number one thing is sticking with one camera organically through, say, an entrance. For example, Jey Uso and Sami Zayn, most famously recently, were coming through the concourse, down through the crowd, and there was very minimal cuts. And if we can bring it up as B-roll, by the way, we'll give credit to anybody. We get videos. There's a spot for the breakdown that we're going to talk about. We'll give credit to other channels, fans that film this stuff. But one channel in particular, they put up an excellent split screen of the number of camera cuts today, post Kevin Dunn and Vince McMahon, as opposed to during the Kevin Dunn era. It was something like 24 camera cuts from Kevin's era compared to now, maybe 6 or 7 at the most. So I would say it's more of an organic type of presentation and production as far as before. It was like, it kept it going with camera cuts. And for people that don't know, it's very difficult in wrestling to direct the matches unless you understand the moves, you understand the match, and also the finishes and false finishes to a certain extent. Because the number one thing that I was taught, at least from a production standpoint, is you cut on impact, or you cut at the beginning of the action. If you ever notice when somebody goes to take a bump or somebody goes to hit somebody, they would cut the camera, first of all, sometimes to hide the space on, say, a punch that was a work punch, but also to create more. They do it in movies. They cut on the action or on the bump or on certain violence. And they overdid that during the Kevin Dunn era to a certain extent, to where it almost became nauseating. Now with WWE and TKO, they have more of an outside look of the way, I guess, television production on a sports level should go. You stay with the action, you stay with the moment. Also, one of the coolest things I've seen in a long time, and it was recently on Raw as we're recording this, was when Braun Breaker and Ludwig Kaiser were running around the ring and Braun Breaker speared them. They had that overhead shot that they used to do way back, and this is for people that might not even be alive. Remember the entrances? Like, say, there was that new generation era of WWE, WWF at the time, but Owen, Hart, or Brett, they would shoot over the ring and have the hologram spinning logo. I love that, dude. That was awesome. And that camera cut gives me a little bit of like goosebumps, because it's like when you see something that sticks in your memory, especially as a 30 plus year veteran. That's a really cool moment caught in a cool way. So that's a very deep dive into the differences. But I would say number one, camera cuts. Number two would be more behind the scenes, morphed into what goes on in the arena. I really like that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about with Brett and Owen, WrestleMania 10, and I think there's a bit where I don't know if it was on a DVD later on that they released like that camera angle for a prolonged period of time, but it's almost like Owen and Brett are going for like a leg grapevine or a heel hook or something like that, and I think Owen like hits him, and then Brett just turns to him and points. But that entire camera cut is that angle is all from above, and it's fantastic. And I wonder if they gave up on that purely because it was a pain to get that set up in the rafters every episode, I guess.
Well, I don't think so. I think they relegated that camera angle to the Money in the Bank, to anything where they're high up, the ladder matches, the top of the cage. That they'll get that camera angle there. I don't think anything is difficult or impossible for the WWE production team. There's people I think that are still there, even though TKO seems to be laying people off and replacing them with TKO UFC staff. But you've got guys like Marty Miller back in my day, Stu, tons of other people that operate these steady cams, handhelds, and they know exactly where to go. For instance, WCW's big like joke back in the day was the cameraman, the handhelds were shooting each other. You always saw the handhelds in the other handheld camera angle, where Vince, I remember him, he was so OCD. You think we're OCD about production. Vince, famously in Beyond the Mat, can I just get a clean shot? There was one cable on the floor. That's where the handhelds in WWE and their production cannot be matched. Because tell me one time that you see, outside of when they get bumped, tell me one time you see a handheld cameraman shooting another one.
I love that. That's where Vince and, let's say, the Turner broadcast was entirely separate, because Vince was shooting TV, whereas Turner was shooting sports in that sense. But I always loved seeing the cameras around. I don't know if I'm just in the minority there, but it gave it a more sports presentation feel. Even seeing like because WCW would always do this, was always have a guy stood on the apron and then in the corner, and then, you know, someone would throw someone in that corner. It felt like they were coming straight into your living room kind of thing. And there are a couple of things that I don't know if WCW innovated, but I really enjoyed the way they did it. And I thought Nitro shot fantastically.
Yeah, that's a good point. But they also, technology caught up, and GoPros and other cameras that were high quality broadcast cameras. The GoPros gave you the shot you needed, but not with the same quality of the $60,000-$80,000. And now with 4K and 8K cameras, there are a lot more. But I would say that WWE also, when they come back from commercials, I love the fact that they have the handheld walking down the aisle to the ring as the action's going on, and then going around the ring. Touching back on that, they've gotten more creative, common sense, organic shots down now, where I think, you know, it's like the saying from The Dark Knight: you die a hero, you live long enough to become the villain. But Kevin and Vince, in their own little production bubble, didn't really see. Now backing up, and I know we took deep dives already, backing up into the WCW thing, you said they were shooting sports while WWE was shooting TV. The NFL does the same thing. When have you ever seen an NFL camera shoot another camera? They're very careful about segmenting their, I guess, designated camera angle area, and they never go outside that vision. It's really well done. There's so much that goes in before the match even starts, before the show even starts, that I think even on an AEW level, there's a lot of stuff they do production wise that reminds me of Nitro in a good way. And they, you know, these companies and these people that work hard need to be appreciated for that.
So you mentioned before with the Kevin Dunn thing, where he, over the years, and I think it really kicked in with the HD era in 2008, where all of a sudden the camera cuts were more frenetic, the zooming in and out thing. You also said to hide the misses, which is, I think they were really paranoid about high definition at that point, and then it just continued on for ages. and also gave me epilepsy. The other thing is okay, I'm going to give you a film example. Have you ever seen Basketball? It's the South Park guy.
Yes.
So there's a bit at the beginning. I've not seen it in years, but there's a guy who's talking about bringing Basketball to TV, and they say something like, "You know that kids these days, their attention span can be measured in nanoseconds." And the guy with the curly hair is just looking up at a bird, open mouth like that. And I'm sort of thinking, is that how Vince and Kevin Dunn saw their audience, as people MTV generation style who had absolutely no attention span at all?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I know that Vince tried his best at one point to keep his pulse on what was current, or at least defer to people that had better clue. He was much better at delegating back then than he is, well, he's not around now, but then before.
Very well, we don't do quickly on this. Should we save the Kevin Dunn stories for another time? Or I don't even know if you have many, really. You seem to be an elusive figure.
Well, I don't really. I was always interested in getting into the truck and learning the backstage stuff and learning production and see how things are directed. I had that opportunity in TNA for the short time I was there. David Sahadi was there in the truck, and actually Terry Taylor and Vince Russo were encouraging talent to go in there, be respectful, peel back and just watch, be a fly on the wall. But it was very, very interesting to see that. Dude, you have no idea. You do, but people don't have any idea. You sit in that truck, it's a wall of little tiny screens. And you got to not only say, cut the camera 3, cut the camera 4, cut back to 1, give me a hard cam. You have to give them the heads up as you're saying, like Marty, for example. Hey, Marty, get around to near the table side, or the commentator side. Hey, get ready to cut the camera 2. Now they're going to do this. Get ready to cut back. Give me a wide shot of the crowd. This is like, as it's happening live, it's an incredibly difficult job. That's why David Sahadi, Kevin Dunn, whoever's doing it now, lots of people. Who are the other people? Neil Pruitt got brought in the AEW. There's people that have almost lifetime opportunities, because once you have that skill, it's hard for somebody to pick it up.
I've been in production trucks before and, done the producer thing, switch to this camera, prepared, etc. And it's almost like sort of diving into a hobbit hole of just darkness. All you have is darkness and screens. And you almost have to prepare yourself for 6 hours of being in this room as well, and then being totally in the zone. It is a very, very hard job to do as well, especially because you're feeling that pressure constantly to get it right. And then you're responsible for however other many people, and then you've got the comms on it anyway.
If you got me, just to close up that point.
Oh yeah.
If you think it's difficult in the ring because it's live and you only got one chance without messing it up or completely botching, imagine if they miss a camera angle and then everybody gets flustered and they keep missing. Now that's worse than botching the actual move, is missing the good stuff, but then getting the botch. It can quickly become a nightmare.
Well, that goes back to WCW as well, in a sense, because they had a revolving cast of production, like cameramen at least, who would be brought in from different divisions of Turner Sports. So you could have one guy who was doing the hockey or basketball, I guess, Turner had at the time, and still technically.
I'm not sure about that. I know Jackie Crockett was, I think, the lead cameraman on that. He was always the constant, but I wasn't sure if I wasn't there long enough. We can talk about my 4 months in WCW, but I wasn't there long enough to get to know how the cameraman or the production staff, and he even had a stunt guy, Ellis, that was in WCW, and he also, I think, worked with WWE as well. So there were some people that were static, but I'm not sure about the people that might have been roving around from the Hawks to the Braves back to WCW.
We're going to move on. So the next bit of news is Marty Jannetty has got a divorce again. So Dutch actually sent me this a few days ago, and we discussed it on Storytime with Dutch Mantel. Obviously, when we're talking about this, there's going to be a few days delay between, because this is for WSI and not the main podcast, will be more current on the main podcast, of course. So, says, old Party Marty is divorcing his wife of less than 1 month after getting married in Florida, with the wedding being officiated by the wife of Brutus Beefcake, Missy Beefcake. If anyone saw the Greg Valentine interview on WSI, then you may have heard Missy Beefcake's name before. Jannetty, clearly a Roxette fan, recently posted on Facebook, "It must have been love, but it's over now. Divorce on the way. Got backstabbed by 2 of my best friends. One of them lives here. Not much longer, though. P.S. It hurts a little, but I'm used to hurting with the ladies. No problem. There's another one waiting." So Marty's already getting back on the horse.
Wow. Well, he has my heart. When my heart gets broken, it takes me like a little more than a week to get over it. But wow, does the article literally open with old Marty? What did you say? Old party Marty?
I wrote that.
Oh,
bit. Okay. I wrote that bit. Old party.
We
Marty.
need to be accurate for that, because I was like, man, that person just went for it in the article, didn't they?
No, I'm sorry. That was my conjecture, as it were.
Well, I have to say, Marty's always been really friendly. He's a very easygoing, laid-back guy. There are some crazy stories that I heard and almost experienced riding with Marty Jannetty and Raven back from a MCW show, if you want to hear that.
Yes, of course I do. Absolutely.
Okay, young Stevie Richards with Raven, nervous, meets Marty Jannetty. Marty's very friendly, but I'm still very nervous because Marty Jannetty's a huge TV star. I grew up, I didn't tell him this because he'd probably get pissed, but I grew up watching Marty Jannetty. By the way, young wrestlers, do not ever say that. I grew up watching you, which I laugh, but some people take it very, very wrong. So we're riding back from MCW, which is a promotion. It's still out there. So if you're in the Maryland area, check them out. They have great talent, great shows. We're riding back, and I think I was driving or Raven was driving. Marty was in the back seat, and he goes, "Hey, stop in front of this house." And Raven's like, "Why? Just stop in front of the house." And I was like, "Oh, we're going to see one of his friends or something or whatever." And Raven's like, "Oh, well, what's the address?" He goes, "Oh, no, don't worry about it. Just stop at any house." And that's the way I kind of recall it, because that was the first red flag. Then Raven was like, "Well, what do you want to stop here for?" He's like, "Oh, I'm just going to kick the door down, run through the house, say hello to everybody, and come out the back door." Which he had done more times than he was much more familiar than I could have realized. I was terrified. I'm like, we're going to do a home invasion on people at like 11 o'clock at night or midnight. He didn't get out of the car, thank God, but he was dead set on, and it was a thing that I had heard about afterwards. Oh yeah, Marty just kind of bust into somebody's house, run through the house, say hello, go out the back door and go back to the car. Now, whether or not he has done that in reality, I can say he was ready to do it that night. And I was just thinking about it. I was scared. Like, we're going to prison. And I'm just in the car. So like, if he literally grabbed something, stole it, and left, now I'm an accessory to breaking and entry, burglary. If it's an expensive thing, grand theft, grand larceny, maybe grand theft auto. For all I know, the car was stolen. It wasn't. We had Raven's car, but yes, that's a Marty Jannetty story.
Who talked him off the ledge? Did you just keep driving, or not given the opportunity?
I have no idea. We stopped. So if he had just gotten out and did it, I would have been like, well, what do we do now? You know?
Oh my goodness me, Marty.
Now that's an example. You have a question here that we're going to touch either on this episode or another one, like riding with people, rooming with people, all that stuff. That was one of the first examples of, I'm going to drive alone and I'm going to stay in my own hotel. Now, once again, the legitimacy or the credibility that this was a thing Marty Jannetty had done, these were just stories. Now, from what I've heard over the past couple of years, maybe not the most nefarious Marty Jannetty story that I've ever heard or maybe experienced. I would much rather be in the car for a potential home invasion than be in the bowling alley that night when Marty talked about that stuff.
Yeah.
We won't get into that because that was...
We'll leave that for now. But you never know, that could be something that comes up.
So I might, on the smart board, put up the picture of the house and annotate it, how he planned to make this happen.
If the one thing that I told, like, I've given Stevie the full script of what we were going to talk about. The one thing I didn't tell him about was the Marty Jannetty news. And then under it, I've actually written, I never told no one this, even my brother Gino, because Gino would have killed it, etc., etc., etc. I included it, but we'll move on from that. We'll keep it for another time. Now, next is an interview that Randy Orton did not too long ago to Bill Apter. And he said the following about Vince McMahon. And this is something that we are going to totally deep dive on the Stevie Richards show, more involved, to the point that we may even just cut this out, quite frankly, because there's just too much to talk about. But this is what Randy said to Bill about Vince. Vince McMahon, he had Raw on Monday Night Live. He doesn't care if you had kids. I came to him when I was 35 and my back really started going, and I pleaded with him like, man, I've got to not do as many shows, maybe do half the tour and be able to recover. And he just looked at me and was like, oh, I need you on these shows, Randy. Mother Nature gets us all. And to hear that and go, okay, well, I guess there's no other thing I can do than just wear myself out to the nub until I can't walk anymore for this man. And all of the opportunities he gave me, it's nice having him out there, but it's also nice having his son-in-law Triple H running the game. Nick Khan's great. Everybody at TKO that's come in and stepped in, they seem to get it. And it's just a different era. I think the way that they care for the talent nowadays and make sure that talent's good, and if they need a bit of a break, we're only human, they get it most of the time. Now, I did also bring this up to Dutch, and as a product of the territory days, I said, well, how many of the promoters out there would just wear you down into powder? And he said every single one of them. I was like, did that die out with Vince, do you think, or was it getting easier in the 2000s?
Well, yeah, we talked about this off camera in our pre-production meetings before the debut of this. And what I'm looking at, I'm reading the quote again. I like at the end where it says most of the time, because that leaves it open-ended, that they're trying to put their best foot forward to take care of the talent. But as always, it's about making money. And Randy Orton is a draw and needs to be there. So I kind of understand what Vince is saying, but Vince also, it's a bit short-sighted to wear somebody out like Randy Orton, who still works great, looks great, he's literally a legend at this point, and to not take care of a guy like that, where we talked about it before, quality over quantity. Vince is just trying, as you say, the metaphor of wearing him down into dust or powder. I would say it got better. It's always gotten a little bit better each year or era, depending upon who takes it over as we come into the modern era of wrestling. We also talked about, like, you would kind of ask me indirectly if I hold any kind of ill will or bitterness or resentment towards people that get guaranteed contracts now, people that are getting paid, more than living wages, people taking a lot of time off, or they take their time coming back from injuries, concussion protocol. I think all these things are excellent, and they should have been done a long time ago. But of course, how do you balance that? It's not like when Vince told Vince Russo, get a nanny, hire a nanny. That's kind of way more, not insensitive, but in a lot of ways insensitive, where a guy could write from home as he's taking care of his children. That could always be done. In this case with Randy, it's tougher because when Randy Orton shows up at a show that he's advertised on, he physically performs in one way or another. Physically has to show up at the show in order for the fans to get their money's worth. So it's kind of a give and take. It's always a game of chicken. It's always a tap dance between the promoter and the talent. Like Dutch said, they're going to wear you out until you're dust or powder. They're going to wear you out until you go out to the field like a horse and get shot, as Bret Hart famously said. Your job is to go out there as a worker, which I think a lot of talents have lost. What Dutch had perfected, and a lot of legends have, is I will work, but I will make it look like I'm working hard and I'm protecting my body at the same time. That's the tap dance that you have to play all the time to not only fool the people in the audience on TV that you're working hard, but fooling the office that you're busting your ass, so they don't think you're just back then being, lazy. And we also talked about chair shots to the head and other things physically that they've improved on. So I would say I'm glad for Randy, because the business needs Randy Orton to be around in it, performing, wrestling younger talent for as long as possible.
I think with Randy, how old's Randy now? He's got to be mid-40s.
At least, yeah.
So he's around mid-40s. In fact, I'm going to live check this as well. Randy Orton is 44. In fact, I thought it was a little older than that.
Well, he started when he was 19, didn't he? In WWE, he started in a ridiculously young age, and I was his first match on Raw, by the way.
Oh, really?
I was the first match with Randy Orton on Raw.
I'm going to get back to that. I'm going to get back to that in a minute. Don't let me forget that. With your tenure in WWF and E, and obviously that stretches from 1999 to 2008, so nearly 10 years. What could you go up to Vince or Jim Ross or John Laurinaitis? And I don't want to open up a can of worms with those three names, but what could you go up to them and they would be sensitive to if you needed a day off or a week off, short of a major injury?
Well, even major injury, back then you didn't want to hide it because the spots were very protected. And when you had something that they were behind, that the machine was pushing, say, right, the sensor, I turned around and said, I was a manager for the most part. So even with my knee injury and I tore my PCL, I was able to still go out, cut a promo, take a bump here and there. But you never did that back then. You just never did it. It's there's a lot of sensitive topics when you talk to somebody in talent relations or somebody, if you go above JR and you go to Vince with something that can cause some heat because there is, much like in the military, a chain of command. So if you go to your agent, you have to almost trust that the agent will go to somebody. But then if they don't, you go above the agent, it'll make your head spin how much your head's on a swivel, literally, of getting heat or not, just for maybe even standing your ground or maybe even just saying, I really think this would be a better way of doing it. Anything and everything can cause heat, and you'll never know until you're sitting at home or you get squashed on TV and they test you, a lot of that stuff. So the sensitive topics really determined, as we talked about off air, most of the time how Vince wakes up that day. That all rolls down to JR, the agents, the writers, and of course the talent. So you literally are mentally drained just from the choose your own adventure of how going up to somebody in the office will go. And then you just don't do it.
just keep your mouth shut. Just survive.
Like Randy's been in the company 20 or 25 years before he finally, that might have been the first time he ever voiced his concern over his physical status to Vince. Because if that was any earlier, Vince would be like, well, obviously you're not durable enough. I got to get somebody else in there.
I think someone like Randy, though, he's going to get more concessions than most. So maybe he at least can spearhead, or like a John Cena or whoever it is at the absolute top of the mountain. It's almost like I guess like a union. You need the guy at the top to sort of spearhead a union, or else it just isn't going to work. So it's got to be the guys on top to break the cycle of whatever used to be, and then try and get some more time off as well.
It never will happen though, because the top guys at the top are getting taken care of to a degree that if there was a union or anybody that it was distributed evenly or any kind of fairness, and there's much less incentive today. A lot of guaranteed contracts. Back then, there was a lot of incentive. You're talking about house shows, pay-per-views. Now they're PLEs, video games, action figures. I think those four are like huge accumulative money makers, multiple streams of income within your wrestling career. Like literally the video game money bought people houses. It used to be like 20 spots, 24, 25, and nothing else. DLC wasn't a thing. These other types of things. When you got on a pay-per-view for a year, you were making some money. When you got an action figure, when you got a video game, when you're on every house show, when you're booked, it's a great feeling. And then when it's taken away, it's a terrifying feeling. Yeah. Because there's no rhyme or reason when you're going to get taken off of these things. And there's really no rhyme or reason a lot of times why you get put on them. So you don't have the formula a lot of times of like, okay, what did I do wrong? What did I do right? And you just kind of got to keep pushing forward.
I want to give one more example, and then we'll get back to the Randy Orton story. Sean Waltman, in an interview, once told a story asking for a day off to go to his trainer Boris Malenko's funeral, and J.J. Dillon told him he was needed on the road. He was in like the opening match. He was in a nothing match. No one would have missed him. It was like night 4. But it's another example of every subsequent talent relations vice president ruling with an iron fist, essentially.
Well, they're not rolling with an iron fist. They are avatars for Vince McMahon. They're basically, just like the writers, just like the agents. These are all buffers and sounding boards to keep you away from the emperor. So, and Vince is super busy. For you to actually have 5 minutes of Vince's time, it means something. You need to make it count. But then again, with Vince too, there was a lot of instances, even in my era, where the last person to get to him before a match or an angle or a finish was what he went with. So you see a line outside his office up until like 5, 6 p.m. before he goes to Gorilla. I had witnessed that personally. But I would also say, with that being said, the Shane Douglas story, going back to Shane, Madison Square Garden, where the doctor did not clear him, where a New York State Athletic Commission doctor to not clear you for a pro wrestling show, you're pretty hurt.
Yeah. I mean, basically, you had to be like breathing and upright.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. How do you feel? Great. Okay, go out there, even though you're sweating and shivering. You got 4 blankets. Yeah, you're good to go. But this doctor, I think, saved Shane from being paralyzed. Thank God. And that was the Vince McMahon, I'm going to go out there and I'm paraphrasing Shane. I'm going to go out there and tell these people that the most important match on the show, which was popcorn after intermission, is going to make them, mad. That's the mental games that Vince would play, that you are the most important match on this house show. Sean Maltman, you're the first match. That's the most important match on the show. That gets everybody started. Don't you want to be on the most important? It almost sounds like it's convincing in a way.
Well, I mean, I've heard so many stories where someone will...
But I would dare to say the first match is the most important psychology-wise to get the fans going, but not to miss a funeral.
Yeah. I mean, the second match can be the most important for one. I don't know. I've heard so many stories where someone goes and airs their grievances to Vince, then 5 minutes later they're agreeing with Vince and nothing's changed. So I don't know where that mind control thing comes from. That from
Jesse Ventura told that story. That was Vince Sr. was so smooth. When you went in to complain about your money, you came out thinking that Vince Sr. was paying you better. That's Vince Sr. Vince Jr. a little bit more nice, but if you say a certain thing that's very innocent, but Vince takes it the wrong way, the switch can flip, and then you're getting TV Mr. McMahon.
Now, I nearly forgot as well. Randy Orton, you had his first match. Was it Raw?
First match.
2002.
Yes, I believe 2002, 2003. I know it was in the Meadowlands. It was in New Jersey. It was Raw, and he didn't finish me with the RKO. He finished me with a high cross body off the top. But that's where he gave the first time he did that kind of stretchy backbreaker thing over his hip. He did all that stuff. And Randy was there. Randy was one of the ones that were snug, but in safe places, very safe places. And obviously he was brand new, shaking hands, coming out, doing the babyface thing. This was well before Evolution or any kind of heel turn, but you knew there was something special about Randy. And he's a deceptively big dude, tall and muscular. He's a big dude, man. And to see Randy pretty much stay, I would say, true to himself, and almost a throwback to how his dad wrestled in a way, very deliberate, what a worker should be, and really dictating the pace and doing all that stuff. I can go on and on about Randy, and then just even the little touches of every single time he does that DDT off the second rope where he drops the guy, the way his facials and the intensity and the gears of doing that move and other stuff, and even the setup for the RKO, it's just, he's one of the guys that when he's on, I'll watch the whole match. which says something with however many dozens of hours of wrestling a week there's out there. Randy is somebody every wrestler and every fan, for that matter, could learn from watching.
I think with fans and Randy and people within the business who know what they're looking for with Randy, it always seems like the people within the business appreciate Randy on a different level because he's doing stuff that most fans aren't even catching.
He's one of the guys when I went to do the smartboard stuff and everything, I had a guy like that in mind that just like him. And this is funny because you never really lump Randy Orton with a Fit Finlay, with a Regal, with the World of Sport. He has a World of Sport, to use like something in your area of promotion. He has a World of Sport type of style, which is a strong style mixed with hybrid of catch as catch can. Catch, I can't even say Philly accent. So you get ready for that, everybody. Count that. Bring up the counter when I mispronounce stuff with my Philly accent. But he just has this style. It's timeless. It can always get over. You can always digest it, and you can always cheer or boo him. There's no, and for a style that could be considered by some of the people, like you talk about the 40-year-old virgin type of demographic, they could find that to be boring. The people that watch other sports, I think, would be huge fans of Randy Orton if they tuned into wrestling.
We shall move on. And this is something I'm finding particularly fascinating at the moment. It seems people within the business are appreciating him. People, as you say, that kind of demographic of people who just are professional complainers on Twitter all seem to hate this next person we're going to talk about, Chris.
You like that segue? That's why I did it.
I know, it's a wonderful segue as well. You see, you're the only person I've ever worked with who actually prints out the script and knows what's coming next as well. So, whereas like Dutch will just read it for 5 minutes and go, yeah, and then he'll totally forget. But
he doesn't even know who I am, by the way. When you said
does.
Stevie Richards, I saw it in his eyes like, yeah, that guy. Oh, you.
He will know your name, I'll tell you.
He will when I print out my diplomas.
Chris Jericho is now doing the overbearingly fake nice character. So he's now the learning tree, and this all stemmed from, as I'm sure you know, Stevie, he was on a pay-per-view with Hook for the FTW Championship, and it wasn't too long ago, I can't remember the pay-per-view name. And then the fans have just started turning on him. This was building for months, but then people are now chanting, go home, Jericho, please retire, this kind of thing. He's in his early 50s. He's been with AEW since the start. And now Jericho's come up with this character to almost really wind up that subsect of AEW fans who can't stand him. I know you're watching. I know you're seeing the clips out there of what Jericho's doing. Speak about Chris Jericho's how malleable he is, basically, in these situations. And also, if you think the fans are right to feel that way about him, or the whole gamut, essentially.
The only way you're going to have longevity in professional wrestling or anything in life is to reinvent yourself to some degree, is to keep growing, keep evolving. And of course, in this case, turning a negative into a positive. That's where Jericho is an amazing worker. You're talking about, I'm not even talking about the physical stuff that people make fun of him or the ad hominem attacks on his, physical conditioning or the shape that he's in or not in. But what Jericho sees here is an opportunity. The fans are never wrong to feel anyway. They're never wrong to react. They're never wrong to not react. It's up to the talent and the people in creative to figure out a way, like you say, use the word malleable. Philly accent didn't get me that time. Use the term malleable. That's what Jericho's doing here. Jericho is now saying, okay, you hate me. There's no way I can turn on you. And by the way, it's so easy to be hated in wrestling. It's very hard to remain liked and even loved. So what Jericho is doing here is reinventing himself into a gimmick that's even better, maybe the best one he's done since he's gotten AEW. The one where people accuse him of being swarmy, cocky, things, and he's done tons of interviews to give him that reputation. So he's just going to milk that, take those as a foundation, and turn it into a TV character, lending people advice, unsolicited, and stuff like that. Also, do you think, this is a very interesting question back to you and the people out there, Do you think Jericho is doing this because AEW, the legends especially backstage, have shared stories privately and the rumors have gotten out that the younger talent won't listen to the legends nor the veterans? So this is a parody of what's going on in real life backstage. Turning something real up to 11 and just presenting it as an angle on TV. And I bet you Tony Khan doesn't even know he's doing it. Like Jericho is ribbing the company by doing this.
What's the end game, do you think, with a character like this? Because you can't do it forever. But what's the end game? Does he just go back to Chris Jericho of old? Does it morph into something else?
I think outside of his official last run, maybe as a babyface in a retirement tour, a retirement match, I think he could do this forever. He can do this as long as there's a new talent or any talent that he hasn't done this particular segment, angle, match with. These are the kind of things where has he done it? I don't know if he's done it. Just a guess or an idea. Jericho needs to have a headset mic on or a microphone that he holds and give his opponent advice as they're wrestling. I did that with PJ Hawks, Luke Hawks' son, on a couple like house shows for Wildcat, where every time I out wrestled him or outsmarted him, I would grab the microphone and tell him how to avoid that next time. Jerry Lawler did that. He commentated his own match. I see Jericho doing that, but the more that he's hated, hopefully people will tune in to see him hopefully get his ass kicked, which will only give AEW better ratings.
So I think the accusation there's two real points about this, but I think one will be a deep dive for another time. I'll give you the deep dive bit. It's like there's certain professionally outraged people on Twitter who seemingly have nothing better to do than either hate on WWE or hate on AEW, that kind of thing. But I think it's really important to note that that is a microcosm on social media and doesn't really have any impact whatsoever on real life, which is something we can discuss at a later date, as far as just how much social media has changed professional wrestling or reacted to professional wrestling. But the other thing is, it seems that a lot of these people who hate Chris Jericho and have done in AEW for a while, is that he is quote unquote, and I'm sure you've heard this before, accused many people as that he's holding people back. And it's like, surely he's doing the opposite, isn't he? I mean, his star power alone is doing the opposite.
Well, every angle he's ever been in since he's been in there, outside of the initial run, and he had matches with Kenny Omega and when they first were birthed as a company, every other one he's been part of a group where he's always deferred to other people in the group. Like, what was it? The Jericho Appreciation Society, the Inner Circle, the MJF stuff. You know, the MJF was with him for a little bit. These are things too, by the way, just advice for young wrestlers out there. And now the learning tree stuff now. He's interacting with other people. If you cannot hold your own improv, live, or even in a scripted manner to deliver whatever lines believably with somebody like Jericho, then you don't deserve. You need to raise your own game up to Chris and everything he's doing, because I'm sure Chris is in these segments, I haven't seen all of them, kind of showing his ass, as we would say in wrestling, handing off some stuff to people to give back to him. Like, yeah, you're a piece of crap. You suck. Go home, retire, anything. He's giving them that opportunity to shine on him. And if you don't take it, it's up to you. Go take his spot. Go usurp him and use him as a stepping stone to go above. Chris is still making multiple millions of dollars a year, whether you win or not. So that's just my take on it.
Right, so that takes us to somewhere around the end of the news. Some of it we'll refer to back some in the first episodes, because we want to do deeper dives, as we do on this show, or the Stevie Richards show, as we're going to do. But something we're going to do a bit more visual that we haven't really done on any of the other shows that I've been a part of ever. I was on Facebook this morning and a photo popped up, and everybody in the comments basically said they don't know who some of the people in the photo are. So obviously we're going to show the photo for everyone to see at this point, and you've got the photo in front of you, Stevie. So tell us who we can see, and tell us who the people that people may not know.
Okay. What we have here, I thought this was a WCW photo, but you got Steve Austin, Billy Gunn in here. So we'll go left to right. Randy Savage, Ric Flair. I don't think that's a worker in the blue. Obviously, one of the greatest of all time, Hulk Hogan. We have a segment coming up about Hulk Hogan, hopefully in the future, based on his Joe Rogan interview.
It could be a weekly. It could be a weekly segment. That
he's the gift that keeps on giving now. Paul White, Big Show. Now no more BS in AEW. I don't think that's a worker next to him. I'm not sure. Steve Austin not selling for the camera. I love that. Then we have Billy Gunn in the background. That one in the front could be Shawn Michaels. I'm not sure. Or just like these three guys, the blue, the lighter blue, the more muted blue, and the black shirt with the golds could be fans. And then on the right is Davey Boy Smith.
Yeah, but I knew all those. I thought you were going to tell me who the guys that we didn't know were.
Who we didn't?
So I know.
I don't know all the guys. I don't know all the guys you said. That nobody knows.
Oh, damn it! Oh, there you go. Well, no one seems to know who these three guys are, but it's like the guy like in the purple, number 3 from left to right. He's wide enough.
He looks like Rick Bassman during the Power Team USA photo. You ever see that picture with Sting?
Yeah. He's way too tall.
That actually looks like the little brother of the Ultimate Warrior from back then, who had the black hair combed over and stuff.
I'd like to highlight Steve Austin's unbelievably massive shoulders. I hadn't really. It's something that just never really gets noticed. But I mean, he's putting Savage to shame there. He's almost at the level of Paul White.
Yeah. And Paul's in great shape too. Paul back then, Paul could do a moonsault. Yeah, he shouldn't have, but he could do all that stuff. And one of the most athletic guys that never. You want to talk about a guy underrated, never got the push he deserved. That's a Big Show in WWE for sure. But yeah, so we'll let people comment below. Maybe these guys look like they're big enough to be workers, especially today. So I don't know.
So is this like Disney or something like that? Because obviously this has got to be 96 or 97. So Steve Austin's already bald with the goatee, so he's definitely not in WCW. The Bulldog. That's 96, 97 era Bulldog, I think, as well. Billy Gunn hanging about.
Well, there's something on the cinder blocks. Is that a Gold's Gym? Is this the entrance to the parking garage for a Gold's Gym somewhere?
Oh, maybe it is.
And since it's near the water, it's either going to be California. That's an easy guess. Or it could be somewhere in Florida, like maybe Jacksonville or something.
Well, I was thinking
they have
maybe
a lot of
Florida.
Stuff around the world.
I was thinking Florida because they taped a lot in Florida, WCW, in Orlando, and maybe it's somewhere near there.
But it's not WCW because Austin's bald, so it's WWE. Or maybe it's WWE guys and WCW guys working out together because they have shows in the area. Yeah. Now, these three guys could be power plant guys for all I know, or they could be the gym owners. I don't know.
Could be production.
Man, they're way more jacked than the boys would never take pictures with people that are more jacked than them if they were production. That's why Austin's standing. The Austin stuff is awesome, and Davey Boy's got the old bodybuilder like chest and lat spread pose. Savage with the thumbs up. Like this is funny.
I like how Paul White is the buffer between the WWF and WCW people in this photo. He's the Berlin Wall.
He makes Hogan look like Hogan is as skinny as me. This is, now that I look at it, because Flair has the shorter hair, like his later days in WCW. Savage is there. Big Show is there before, like when I think this is almost when he started. Hogan's got the Hollywood stuff. Austin's bald that's the number one indication that this is anywhere 96 to 97, maybe 98.
It can't be 98 because Bulldog left in late 97. Although
so it's 96, 97 possibly.
Yeah.
Because Austin shaved his head. Because remember, he was the ringmaster. He still had hair. Then he shaved his head Or no, he shave his head? He had hair in ECW when he was there at the same time. He shaved
it very, very early WWF, excuse me, very early, because originally when
was
he
was the ringmaster? It was. I think he shaved it. He came out like with DiBiase at first with the hair.
With the hair, because I think he debuted. Not many people know this.
Belt.
He debuted in 1995. People think it was 96, but he was like in the last week of 95.
96 was, it feels like forever, but in that short year, he morphed from the ringmaster to Stone Cold, got the new music, started talking. He did that famous promo in the studio where he wrecked, "Don't you count me down, son," and ended up beating up everybody and destroying the Titan Tower studio. That was 96 when he started calling out Brett, right?
Oh God, yeah, that was definitely 96.
I'm saying that's how wrestling, in a short span of a year, he went from the most boring gimmick that wasn't going to get over in 95 to 96, starting to be the biggest draw possibly in wrestling history.
I'm looking here. His first match in WWF was the 18th of December 1995, where he defeated, of all people, Matt Hardy. There you go.
I don't even remember that. I remember him and Savio had the first program with him as Stone Cold. I believe it was Savio. Then he did the Triple H like Sunday Night Heat before the pay-per-view match. Remember, where the fans really started to cheer him.
It was the free for all at the time in 96.
Yes, there you go.
Because I remember,
so you're a steel trap of knowledge and facts.
I know 90s WWF, and that's about it. But I remember one in SummerSlam. SummerSlam 96. Steve Austin and Yokozuna was on the free for all. It was like those two dudes. That's a message for any young wrestler out there. I know that there's a machine out there. I know to some degree there's a glass ceiling in some places that you have to break that glass ceiling. But Austin was essentially dead in the water as the ringmaster, and there was nothing until, obviously he sits down with his wife at the time and she goes, "Drink your tea, it'll get stone cold." That literally changed the course of one of the biggest draws in wrestling history. That little tea time and sitting at the kitchen table changed the course of his entire career. We were talking yesterday about something, and this sort of relates to what you were saying about Steve Austin, just a little something that can just change the course of your career forever. But really, something else, Steve Austin, I sure remember him saying in an interview, one of the most important things he did, aside from, the name change and the presentation change, was that he stood up to management. And this, I think, was after the Austin 316 promo. And it was something to the effect of he was doing an interview or whatever it was, or a soliloquy, let's say, and the production team, after the fact, were editing out a lot of the funnier things that he was saying. So they were editing out some of the worst language and editing out essentially what was making the productions team laugh. And at one point, Steve goes to Vince and says, "Look, if you take away this from me, you're hamstringing me to a point that I can't get over," to use the parlance. And Vince agreed. And it's one of those things where I'm sure it's, as you were saying before earlier in the show, it takes a lot of guts to go to Vince and say something like that, not knowing even what side of the bed he woke up in that morning. And if he went the other way, if he woke up on the wrong side of bed, that could have changed the course of wrestling history.
Yes, but here's a factor that probably made Vince a lot more open to delegating that authority and letting the guys get over, or letting them be themselves. Because at the time, Vince didn't even have a choice. WCW was about to put WWE out of business. They had taken the water coolers out of Titan Towers. There was a lot of stuff going on. This is a kind of a repeat of WrestleMania 1, where Vince mortgaged his home and took out loans and stuff to make WrestleMania 1 happen. If that didn't happen as a success, not to mention Mr. T, they had to find him and bring him into Madison Square Garden. Hogan tells that story. We can save that for the Hogan segment. But Vince literally was pretty much, his business was dying. He was getting destroyed. What did he have to lose? That's kind of how Vince Russo became head writer of WWE. He wrote the magazine stuff And all the stuff in the magazine, Vince famously said, "This is what I want the show to be," and held up the magazine. Steve Austin was probably smart enough to know, hey, he's open to ideas because he's becoming more and more desperate just to get back on track with that. So that's where the safe, like Duke the Dumpster Drosy, all the other TL Hopper, that was the safe era before they just totally did a 180 and said, you know what? If we're going to go out of business, we're going down in the blaze of glory. That's the kind of reckless nature of the product that made it successful. I think Vince was just like, F it, we're just going to do it.
I'm glad you mentioned Vince Russo because he's another perfect example. So this comes from Jim Cornette. So obviously, their history and whatnot. But he said that Vince Russo ended up getting more influence, let's say, in the WWF in early 1997, where there was a Raw that was from, let's say, I think it was Germany. There was one from South Africa that was terrible. Then there's one from Germany, and we're talking production levels here, just terrible, not TV worthy. And Vince Russo, everyone thought it was going to be a bad idea, but Vince Russo was the first person to stand up and say, this sucked. I knew it was going to. And I'm sure Vince will correct me if I'm getting it wrong, but basically saying, you should have listened to me, or you should have listened to whatever. And Vince McMahon heard that and thought, well, he gets it. And that's when he ended up getting more influence and eventually becoming head writer. So it's one of those things like Steve Austin or any number of people is you've got Vince at the right time, you've put your case forward in the right way, and you're rewarded for it. But so many times it can go the other way.
Absolutely right. I think that was Journey. It was definitely an international Raw that the production was. It looked worse than a house show from what Vince Russo had told me with that. I would say this, this is how you temper it with that version of Vince. I think as time went on, he became a lot less open to any kind of feedback or suggestions. But the thing you do with Vince is, and I learned this after the fact as I became more mature and saw it, with Vince, you have to complain to him and give him feedback about this particular segment, show, promo, whatever it might be, to protect his business, to protect his vision. You're on his side trying to help him. If you come at him and say, dude, you're stupid, who wrote this when he wrote it, you're done. That would be the advice I would give people. I'm protecting your product. I'm protecting your vision. And he's like, okay,
I think that probably actually, mentioning Russo again, I think Vince, as far as I can tell, obviously I was never in the company, I'm just an outsider looking in, it's when Russo left, that's when Vince McMahon seemed to be tightening the reins more. And I've heard that from subsequent writers. And between like 99 and the mid-2000s, the culture of autonomy in the WWE had completely changed. So now everything has to be run through Vince all the time. And once again, if he gets up on the wrong side of the bed, he could just screw it up and throw it in the bin. And then you're back to square one.
Well, people have a lot of opinions about Vince being lack of empathy, lack of emotion, lack of feelings, and those could be true at the same time as what I'm about to say. But remember, Vince also gets hurt. When Luger left and showed up at Nitro without any notice as he was, I think, working a tag match on their TV with Davey Boy, that hurt Vince. When Savage left, I think it hurt Vince, like on a personal level. When Russo left for WCW, which was based on the nanny speech that Vince gave Russo, so it wasn't unwarranted for Russo to say, I want to go to WCW where I can spend time with my family, and they're offering me a ton of money. But Vince at that point said, probably on a personal level, I'm never going to trust another writer again. I'm never going to give somebody that kind of power, because what if they leave and they give away the secrets to WCW? That makes a little bit more sense, I think.
Now, we're going to move on to the welcome return of Stevie Richards' Whiteboard, and we're going to do some analysis with the full word analysis in there as well. So, as Stevie switches cameras and microphones and the whole bit and that kind of thing, we are going to do a little look at one of the most memorable spots in professional wrestling in the last month or two, and that is the Adam Copeland, I've written Edge, Adam Copeland cage dive from, I hate to say the most recent pay-per-view because I've already forgot the name of the pay-per-view, but Stevie, over to you, take it away.
So the spot we're talking about in this episode is Adam Copeland, also known as Edge, coming off the top of the cage onto Aleister Black, onto a table. He means to splash him, and I've been, even on the second rope, it's too high for me. Adam's not on the top rope. Adam's on top of the cage. So as you're trying to splash somebody, it's almost scary to over-rotate, much like when Eddie Guerrero messed his elbow up on the frog splash. So Adam was trying to keep himself a little further back. So as he's here, what he wants to do is come down and splash Black right there. Malachi Black in AEW, Aleister Black in WWE. The problem is that he's worried that he is going to overshoot him. So now he's going to go like that, and his body's going to come down. He's going to jam his elbows, hurt his head. So he's trying to lean further back this way in order to land on his feet like this and then splash him. Unfortunately, that didn't work out that way. So we're just going to play the clip here. Thanks once again. We're going to give the person credit who supplied this fan cam video, but watch this as he comes down. And when you're up here, by the way, James, he's looking, they got a close-up of his face. If you check out AEW's YouTube channel, they have a close-up of his face. And I saw it, that look of, ooh, I'm up here. I shouldn't be doing this. This is a bad idea. But when you're on top of the cage or on the top rope, you got to go. You got to go. And unfortunately, he went. So let's play this straight through. Now, as he comes down, you could see right there, on that right there, and we're going to pause it right when he's coming down. You can see that his body is literally like he's coming straight down. So literally straight down onto Black here. See, right there is basically straight down right there. So what we're looking at as we bring the pen up again, James, it's just all his weight is going straight down there. No matter how you land, even if you land like this and do the splash after you land on your feet, it's kind of like jumping off a bridge. They say jump feet first, but you're going to break both your legs hitting the water. It's a lot like that. So when he did that, I just got to say, like, I can't blame him for being afraid. I can't blame him for second guessing it, but I wish that he somehow, I don't even know, called the Black or told the referee to tell him to get up and like throw him off or kind of nut him onto the ropes or onto the cage right here to where he can stay up there, because it was just risk versus reward. As I said all the time on the Wrestling Analysis channel, there was way more risk involved and no reward. In other words, the only reason this was memorable was because he got hurt. If he had done the spot correctly, splashed him, Gangrel, which, by the way, Gangrel, coming out from underneath the ring, kind of glossed over this moment here and was in a way a bigger moment of a surprise return or a surprise debut. So the way it was booked made this, whether he got hurt or not, mean a lot less. So that's where I'm at right now. And it's just a shame that Adam got hurt. I wish him the best to recover and everything. He's a great talent. He's a great guy. Now I'm going to switch and you give your thoughts of what you think, James.
So while you're switching, I'm going to ask a couple of things then. So is it a classic case of overthinking? And you're in a situation that there's only one way out of it. You've got to do the move, but now you've second-guessed yourself. Because I did I actually took an image from the AEW pay-per-view itself, and I did a very, very unscientific, I cut Edge out and then doubled him down. And that cage was a legitimate 12 feet high. And he's 6'5", so his eyes are another 6 feet off the cage. He's looking 18 feet down at Malachi Black there. And I think from that, it's very easy to see how you'd second guess or overthink what you're about to do, because you said before over rotating is It happens very rarely in dives like that, doesn't it?
It's hard to say. First of all, Adam hasn't really ever done a splash off the top of the cage that I can recall. He's done the TLC matches. There's plenty of height involved with that. But most of what Edge did, Adam, was the only spot I remember him landing anywhere close to this way, meaning not a back bump, but a front bump, is when he speared Jeff Hardy when he was holding on to where the belts are. That's different because he's coming down on his knees and his elbows. He's coming down essentially, and he's got a body that can take a lot of the fall. But still, as you get older, he's in his 50s. So I understand more than I should that you do something like that. And also in the way, when you're in your 50s and you're wrestling full time, which I don't do right now, but he does, you don't want to be handled with kid gloves. You want to be able to, it's your own ego. You want to be able to hang with the younger guys, do everything they do. You still got it, chants. This is awesome. Fight forever. All these chants that get into our ego that say, I can do this. I can do this. And it's a very, very dangerous game to play because AEW is hurt more by this spot than even Adam. Adam's got a broken tibia. I don't know the recovery time for somebody over 50 just bumping in the ring, much less breaking your tibia. It's got to be 9 months to somebody that's younger. Well, I think 9 months to a year.
I'm just looking here. It says recovery, most tibial shaft fractures take between 4 to 6 months to heal completely. Some take even longer. So it's not quite like an ACL tear, I guess. But as you say, age is definitely going to play a factor. But it's also, he's not going into high level, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, high level competitive sports where with a tibial fracture, if your leg isn't 100%, you can work around it, as is the term worker.
Yeah, but I would say this. Now, you need to be really, really careful, no matter if there's a tibia injury or not, or an Achilles injury or an ankle injury or any lower body injuries. Think about if you've ever been near the rings on an indie show or any show where the rings are very inconsistent. There's holes in the ring. And even if the ring's perfect on match 1, if Adam is match 6, there could be a hole. Someone could have bumped and broke a board. So he's running the ropes. And right there, your tibia and that part of your leg takes a lot of shearing, a lot of impact, just running the ropes. Not to mention an up and over from the corner where you land on your feet, or if he even does anything, a double axe handle off the second or the top, he's got to be very careful because I think after that first break, unless he got hardware put into it, which also when you get hardware put into a part like that, now your ankle, your Achilles, your knee, your hip, your lower back has to kind of compensate or overcompensate, not to mention whichever leg he broke, the opposite one, you're naturally going to overcompensate on that. So I don't know if he's going to come back. I think he definitely will come back in some capacity, but let me back up. Adam Copeland, even though this spot, even if you wrestled once a year, you're going to break your tibia. You're going to get hurt with the way it was done. But this is the opportunity for AEW, WWE, or anybody else, touching back on the Randy Orton story. These are legends. These are special attractions. They can appear and talk, interact, build anticipation, get younger talent over. The matches have to be very much quality over quantity. If Edge or Randy Orton wrestle more than 4 or 6 times a year, I believe it's too much, and you're doing a disservice to the business because that analogy of Randy Orton needs to stick around to foster and help the younger talent. The same case up on that board is for Adam Copeland. And I'm sure, like if I was Malachi Black, I would absolutely refuse. No, dude, because you're jumping off a cage and then 2 minutes later, the big surprise of Gangrel comes up through the ring. You're immensely dangerous spot that should be its own, oh my God moment, no matter what happens, is negated by a dude who's not even signed being a surprise. Did you feel that way watching it?
Do you know, I felt something something different, just as you said. Not only is Adam Copeland taking himself out of AEW, he may have just cost Gangrel a gig with AEW as well.
Once again, didn't that happen to him before? Didn't that happen before? Because Edge came out at SummerSlam to the Brood music, and they were planning to debut Gangrel as a surprise.
Yeah,
and Tony Khan canceled that.
Gangrel's one of those people who always seems to, just at the last minute, it gets pulled away from him a return. I remember a story when he was going to go in, and you may know this, WWECW, that version. He was going to be part of the Vampires with Kevin Thorne and Ariel, and that got taken away at the last minute, I believe.
You want to talk about guys that are like timeless wonders? Gangrel looks the same, and Gangrel works the same as he did when I used to work him back on Heat, Metal, and on Jacked and all the stuff in the 90s in WWE when I first got there. He's one of the most intense and one of the most underrated workers and people in the business. He's really a great guy. He has a great wrestling school in South Florida. He teaches the next generation. And the only thing that I feel bad because him being on TV on a consistent basis will help his school business out. And he should have a job. So hopefully Tony Khan uses him to replace Adam in the meantime until Adam gets back.
I'm going to mention a couple of things, and then we're going to get on some fan questions.
By the way, we're going to clean up the production on the whiteboard. So please be patient with us as we tighten up the format.
Oh, don't worry, we'll clean it up. You won't even see the holes in it, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you, that'll already be cleaned up.
Now they know.
Now they know. So there's an awkward bit. Do you think there's any thought in Adam's head when he was on top of the cage, not only just for his own safety, but maybe he was looking, as I say, his eyes are 18 feet off from the canvas, looking down at Malachi Black. Do you think there was almost him trying to take the impact out to protect Malachi?
Well, yeah, number one, whether he hits it right or not, he's protecting the other guy. That's just the kind of guy that Adam is. But when you're up there, and the TV doesn't do it justice. For instance, I was in EV2 versus Fortune. It was a lethal lockdown match in Daytona Beach, Florida, Bound for Glory. And I volunteered. Nobody else volunteered. That should have been my first clue, to climb up to the top of the cage and fight with Kazarian. And I'm thinking this cage is going to be as tightly wrapped as possible. No, you saw it in the Undertaker Mankind Hell in a Cell.
The sagging, yeah.
Dude, every step was like, because then you're looking, I guess I'm 18, 20 feet as I'm standing up looking across, and I can see the box truss at eye level. And I'm sure Adam's seeing the lights. And you're like, you might as well be jumping out of an airplane. It was the most terrifying, and I'm afraid of heights. I'm also afraid of flying, which you laugh at every time I say that. Might as well be afraid of rental cars and hotel rooms at the same time. But it's terrifying. So he's trying, number one, to protect Black by not over-rotating, and then not over-rotating to blow his elbows out, to land like in the wrong way on your head. And when you come down like that, and I think Adam and I have kind of like the same kind of body composition, where we're both kind of ass heavy. So if we're going to go straight here, we are going to over rotate. So we tend to kind of overcompensate the other way, which this would happen. So just close off the point with this. If the business, especially AEW, loses Adam Copeland as a talent that shows up and contributes, they're definitely going to be hurt. That's a guy you want in your locker room.
You alluded to before, where you said, Gangrel comes out and then no one remembers the dive. But the fact is that really there are so many dives, and this has happened over the course of 20 odd years, that it's tough to remember any of them almost, really. And especially in AEW, because there are so many spectacular stunts. And I'm wondering here, is there a culture being fostered in AEW to get everybody to take risks out of their wheelhouse? Because I'm going to bring up an example of Sting. I mean, he was never doing he was doing some crazy stuff in TNA compared to WCW. I know he was doing stunts and stuff in WCW, but in AEW, I mean, you must have seen that dive off the ladder he did to the outside, and all he did was just smash his chin into someone else's knee. And It looked good for the interview afterwards because he was pouring blood out of his mouth. But do you think there's an AEW, a culture in AEW fostering where the just risks are being encouraged?
I think AEW does a lot of what ECW did. And I can't speak because I haven't been there to AEW, but you kind of let the talent go to a point to be creatively free and not handcuffed. But then it goes to a point where the talent are their worst enemy and need to be protected from themselves. I feel like Adam, Malachi Black, who else? Moxley, when he came over, they all have chips on their shoulders with something to prove. And that's not a bad thing. But when you have something to prove, you're more than willing to do things that might not be within the character you are on TV, nor within the safety protocols that an agent in WWE would pull you aside, or even Vince, and would say, no, you're not doing that. And say all you want about Vince and all the other stuff. There are certain protections and fail safes in place to protect the wrestlers from themselves in most cases. Now, with the TKO takeover, I believe those safety protocols have been laxed. The talent has more freedom to cut promos, curse, but they also have more freedom to do out-of-pocket things like this. And I think somebody in WWE is going to get hurt, and then TKO is going to go, wait a minute, we need to kind of go back a little bit to what we had before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to follow up on one thing, then we're going to get some fan questions. You said this at the beginning when you were talking about Adam Copeland's dive, as well as a fan, as someone in the business with 30 years plus experience. You only really remember these days the ones that go wrong. So it sort of begs the point, why do it?
That's a good point. And if you're going to do it right, you have to think about what's going before, during, and after your supposed memorable moment. Because if the moments before it are better, and the moments are after especially are better, what did you say? People don't have long attention spans. So they may not even remember this down the page. Like I said, if he didn't get hurt, I guarantee you the Gangrel surprise from under the ring would have overshadowed the dive no matter what.
So the only ones I remember off the top of my head is Sting's dive where he chinned himself into the guy's knee, the Edge one, the Adam Copeland one that we just discussed, and the Dante Martin one where he crushed his ankle after dropping off a ladder as well. So, yeah.
And Dante's a really good kid and has a great future. And he can do what he did before, which surprises me with the way he broke his ankle. It turned all the way around, I think. No. And I encourage wrestlers to do this. You haven't done this enough. This business is far too self-absorbed individually. And whenever anybody gets hurt, I try to reach out and at least message them on social media or get their number and text them to see how they're feeling or say, hey, man, get well soon. So just a little lesson. I try to do that when people get hurt. I haven't done with Adam yet because, I'm sure he's just busy doing stuff, but it's within me to always want to, hey, man, are you feeling okay or whatever? It goes a long way for the talent because I guarantee you there probably aren't a lot of people that are keeping up and checking in with any of these guys to see how they're feeling.
So to close out this show, I've snuck in one question that I didn't send to you, Stevie, as well. We're going to ask a few fan questions that are holdovers from the previous interview that we did last year. A lot of the questions that you wrote in and asked as well, I've saved for future episodes of the Stevie Richards Show because they will bear longer answers to the point where, we'll be talking 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes on them, I guess. So these are, I wouldn't say they're quick-fire questions at all, but there's some from the fans that I thought would be interested to bring up to close out the show. And the first one is from Nigel, and he says, ask Stevie when he got his nose broke in his first WWE match.
I believe, and I don't want to correct Nigel or assume, I think what he's talking about is Chris Masters' first match in WWE, where I got my nose broken, my orbital bone, all these top teeth, needed root canals and a couple crowns. I did not break my nose in my first WWE match. My first appearance in WWE was actually saving Meanie from Al Snow on Sunday Night Heat. And then Meanie and I tug up, and that was the infamous trying to hook up jumper cables to Pepper at SummerSlam. That was our claim to fame. I didn't have a first WWE match until probably after that SummerSlam match. And I didn't break my nose. It was just a regular, like I think I wrestled Takam and Chinoco or S.A. Rios, and it was completely fine. I think he might be talking about the Chris Masters match. It was Penn State. I had just come back from Puerto Rico. That has nothing to do with anything, but they wanted me to work Chris. That was where Arn Anderson famously or infamously said, hit him as hard as you can. Stevie can take it. I said, no, I can't. Then after the match, when it all went down and Chris was very upset, Chris Masters, an incredible talent, incredible guy. That's when Arn went up to him and said, don't worry about it. It's only Stevie, which Arn has apologized for. So I hold no ill will to him, but kind of that encapsulates the thing in wrestling that your value as a human being is determined by your push, which I accept. That's fine. So I did not I broke my nose plenty of times after the first match, but not in that first match, Nigel.
And you were just saying before how this business can be be self-absorbed and not checking on other people's welfare. That was just in the last thing as well, so it's sort of a good segue almost into that question. I will have more follow-up questions regarding your debut with WWF, but we'll leave that for now. We'll leave that for the Stevie Richards show when it debuts on June the 28th. Is it? Yeah, June 28th.
Yeah, June 28th.
Fantastic. Okay.
No pressure.
We've got a couple. Don't worry, it'll be fine. We've got another one from QB. He says, please ask Stevie his thoughts and experience working with women in WWE. It's never talked about. Specifically, what it was like working with Trish Stratus and Victoria. I really respect Stevie for always willing to put the women over and legitimizing them to appear even more badass. I think with Victoria, that's going to be an episode all on its own as well. And this is an aside as well. I think we'll probably stick on Trish with this one, but as an aside, came up on my Instagram a few days ago, you versus Luna Vachon in ECW in a cage match. I had no idea about that match at all. So that
I see that I submitted to the testicular claw, jumping off the top of the cage and landing on my feet, by the way. Much like Adam. Because how am I going to jump off the top of the cage knowing that Luna with her 6-inch nails is like this, and I got to land there without getting nails into certain parts that the nails went. So that's a little too TMI for everybody. I had scars that I still carry today.
Hey, we'll get back to the other question. Because I mentioned the Luna thing then. Was that the first intergender match in ECW history?
I think it was the first intergender cage match in all of wrestling history, but it was the first. No, it wasn't the first intergender because we had Dreamer and Luna versus actually myself and Raven. And I think Beulah was in there on some mixed tags. There was a lot of mixed tags and intergenders that happened before that, but that was the first intergender cage match that I think was anywhere in wrestling. But to answer his question, Trish was amazing to work with. All the women were amazing to work with. Fit Finley and I did a lot of coaching. Not that they needed much they were incredible athletes, but psychology, characters, how they work together. And WrestleMania 19 is what pretty much Trish and I are most famous for, with the stratisfaction she gave me and I bumped out of the ring, prefaced by me hitting myself in the head with a chair at WrestleMania. That was my WrestleMania moment. So, but that speaks to something like, for other workers out there, I knew for a fact that there were tons of amazing wrestlers, especially at WrestleMania 19 pay-per-view, Shawn and Chris, Brock and Kurt, Hogan and Vince. I mean, you can't outshine these people. So the niche I had to look for to stand out, much like when Raven told me, wear Daisy Dukes in a half shirt, be a clueless putz, be a wussy, you are going to stand out in the land of shooters, tough guys, street fighters. This was the lesson I carried with this, that if I become the valet instead of the woman who's usually the valet, if I become the valet to Victoria, if I become the person that feeds for the women to hit moves on, I will stand out. Now, in the office and in the locker room, they probably looked at me less than because I'm selling for women, because I'm doing stuff. But just like QB points out, it created moments and memories that people remember. And that's really the point of doing this. Also, by serving others and by helping others get over, the talent wants to work with you and is going to be more accepting of you pitching stuff that might get you over. So there is a political aspect to doing it. But all in all, Trish is all the women in that time, Jazz, Trish, Victoria, Molly Holly. If I'm leaving anybody out, you look at Charmel and her way with Booker and other things. The females were incredible. Probably in my estimation, the best female characters that came along in modern wrestling history. Those girls could work, but they also were characters. And it was just an immense honor to be able to be kind of put into that, even though my spot may have been viewed and was viewed by a lot of male talent as being career killing in a way. So I took that chance to stand out where it could probably, and it probably did, make it look like all you're good for is putting talent over after that. But it got me on WrestleMania, it got me featured, and also got me some political capital within the company because I was so selfless in that way that when I did ask to do something or pitch something, like I said, they were a little more accepting of that.
Who are the women who can believably do an intergender match? Because I think they're few and far between. I mean, Jackie, Miss Texas.
I left her out. She's amazing too. I'm sorry, Jackie. Yeah.
Luna, as you mentioned before. China. Awesome Kong, maybe something like that. But I don't really know what I'm going to ask here, apart from the fact that there are so few women out there. Who
can hang physically with men in the ring and work?
Yeah, but the thing is, and have the fans accept it as well, because obviously you need someone like you who's willing to, I'd hate using the insider, put them over for God's sake. I hate using the insider lingo, but I end up doing it a lot because I can't think of not. But who else could do it?
What you're kind of looking at is the way the locker room looks at it. You're sacrificing the masculinity of your character, which also makes guys not want to sell for you, not want to put you over. And that was all reality after coming out of this. Jackie is number one because you gotta keep up with Jackie. You gotta hang with her. She's not hanging with you. Awesome Kong's another one. China is one, but you have to work the China match. Chris Jericho has famously said that China was difficult to work with. I agree with that. Jericho was villainized for that, or vilified. But I agree with that. But that doesn't make her not a great worker, not a great wrestler, not a draw. You just have to work her match. I would put Gail Kim in that. Gail Kim took beatings from Awesome Kong. I've worked in intergender matches with Gail Kim. She can hang with the guys. From a look, she's a very petite girl. So you'd no, but she's a tough girl. Victoria is definitely one. I think Molly Holly, even though same as Gail, more feminine, might not look, but Molly Holly can chain wrestle, can wrestle with the best of them. Who else? Even back in the day, Tori Wilson, or not Tori Wilson, even though Tori could take bumps. Tori that was with DX.
Yeah.
Could wrestle.
Terry Pock or Potch, I can't remember her surname, how you pronounce it, but yeah, I know.
I'm not sure. Terry Runnels took some share of nasty bumps, her share of nasty bumps. I think women in wrestling are severely underrated. Now today, they're incredibly athletic, although I do think their characters and even psychology are very 2D. There's no layers to them. That's why people look back at Jazz, Victoria, Gail Kim, Trish, China, and there's a slight disconnect or maybe even a de-evolution in the girls today, which, like I said, they're incredible athletes, but in pro wrestling, it needs to translate into a storyline and a character, or you're just another wrestler.
I was thinking of one more. I wouldn't do intergender matches with her, but someone who could take a ton of bumps, Francine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any girl in ECW is going to, Lori Follington, Sandman's wife or ex-wife at the time. And there's tons of girls that need to take bumps. And thank God that they're always put with people like a Fit Finley to really not beat them up, but teach them the right way. Fit's one of the best. Robbie Brookside at the Performance Center is also one of the best at teaching foundation stuff. This is all world of sports stuff. William Regal, these are the people that need to be in the business and need to be helping people.
I'm going to give you one more question, then we're going to call it a day. So we're ending, unless we don't like this question, then we'll end on one more. Alexander Ball has written in and says, Alexander Ball has written in, well, I don't burp. I've always thought that Stevie's glass ceiling came from looking too much like Shawn Michaels. Is this just conspiratorial nonsense on my part, or could there be some validity to it?
Oh, Alexander, you and I are not privy to that knowledge. And I would say maybe an educated guess would be, we already got one person that looks like that. But then again, at the same time, WWE wouldn't even have hired me in the first place if it were that glaringly like this is a Shawn Michaels ripoff. The glass ceiling for me probably is my own fault for not willing to be as political, as cutthroat. My whole focus was the things that you see on the smart board with the analysis and stuff like that. It was very much trying to learn the psychology, the really nuance and detail aspects of the business. And the politics is really the most important thing. Kissing ass, politicking, trying to get yourself over, cut a throat here and there. This is really what gets you to the top. And I wasn't willing to do that. And I think I dare say that my time in WWE would have been much more limited if I didn't serve others and didn't learn how to put everybody over. That made everybody want to work with me. So I created my own glass ceiling, maybe unintentionally, but then when I got it, I said, okay, I got a lot more. If I take the jobs, if I take the spots, if I go to the places and do the things that everyone else refuses to do, if I'm a good soldier, I can at least get more time in the company and maybe get hired by another company and have a reputation for giving and serving others. That's what it is. I worked briefly with Shawn on a couple of house shows, and I was very excited. I probably to the point where I marked out because Shawn was one of the main reasons I got in the business. AWA Shawn Michaels and the Midnight Rockers with Marty Jannetty, huge fan. You just identify with a talent, maybe because I thought I looked a little bit like him. I obviously didn't have anywhere near the athletic ability of Shawn Michaels, nor Marty Jannetty. But as I look at this question, I have nobody to blame but myself, which I'm sure every wrestler in history takes full accountability for their shortcomings. But I do. It's strictly on me, and there's a lot of things I could have done better and done a lot more expeditiously, not the cutthroat stuff, but I could have concentrated more on my craft and made myself better rather than, oh, it's the office's fault. Oh, they're not pushing me. Oh, this and that, rather than saying, like I did with Stevie Night Heat, you got me on heat, I'm going to make the most out of it. So it took me that many years to actually kind of half get it. So thank you very much, Alexander, for the question. Excellent.
With that being said, because he's brought up Shawn Michaels and a physical resemblance, but there's also a finisher that you both have in common. It's the super kick.
Oh, it's totally different. It's a Stevie kick.
Well, to be honest, that's sort of what I was going for, because honestly, yours was better. And I remember one, I hope it's the right one. I don't know if it was like SummerSlam 2000 or WrestleMania 17. It's somewhere around, it was in the Right to Censor era. And you're not in the match. I think you're the manager for the rest of the guys. And you fly in and super kick. Looks fantastic. Then you leave and it leads to the win. And I was thinking, Shawn Michaels couldn't have done that. Because it was a great looking kick. But also, I don't mean to cut you off. Were there any issues with you using the super kick when Shawn Michaels came back from retirement?
It's a great question. Actually, going back to the actual kick, Dude, I'm so OCD. I will kick different ways depending upon the person, the length of their hair, their height, and also especially if they've ever had a neck or spinal injury. I don't touch people, but just on the off chance I jack someone's jaw, I don't want to re-injure their neck. So there's certain times, and also more times than not, you never super kick or kick anybody in the back. You never even hit anybody in the back from behind. There's been even when I kicked Dreamer, he would do spots with Victoria where he'd pull her in for the pile driver. I would kick him on the side of the head, not the back. He wanted me to kick him right in the back of the head. I would very rarely, if ever, do that. But your question about the kick, before anybody ever came up to me to tell me, the second Shawn sat down in catering, I went up to him, reintroduced myself for like the 12th time, and said, I just want to let you know, I'm going to stop doing the kick. It's your finish. I have utmost respect. It was a tribute to you, which it was, but I'll stop doing it and I'll come up with a new finish. I go, besides, I never beat anybody anyway, so what's the difference? And he kind of laughed, and that's how, and I meant it. It wasn't me kissing ass or doing anything, but I wanted to let him know, I know you're here. It's your finish. And you know what he said? He was actually, Chris Adams has the best super kick ever, which could have been a trap because I agree with him, but I didn't verbally, you know what I mean? And I say, yeah. And he was like, oh, are you saying my kick sucks? And you know how it goes.
Yeah. Is Chris Adams the innovator for bringing it to pro wrestling, do we think, or is there someone else?
Yes. And actually my kick, I developed it to be that one. Like you said, his was the running savate kick. Mine was either standing. I never liked the duck to clothesline super kick. I always wanted to hit it out of nowhere. So to me, it was like what you said. I rolled in, I sort of took a running start, hit the kick, and then rolled out or went through the middle rope. So, but once again, Shawn has the greatest super kick ever because Shawn Michaels is the greatest performer that we've ever seen, the greatest athletic wrestler mixed with high flying psychology and ending with, dude, all this, I was going to say a bad word, all this stuff that Shawn does, he's so over that he does all this stuff that supposedly outshines his basic kick, but people cheer for the kick. That's a great worker.
We're going to get people arguing that Brett's better. That's got to be an in-depth thing that we've got to do in the future at some point. Comparing
They're
Shawn
both
and Brett.
equally as great. And that's not a political thing. We can. If somebody wants to follow up with a question, who's better, Brett or Shawn, and why? I'll give you a very categorized
in what?
Comparison between them.
Yeah, better in what? Because I think overall, their stats are the same.
It's a wash. If you look at overall bodies of work, I would say it's a wash. Although Shawn, I think, had more success because he stayed in WWE and he had a longer career that he stretched out. And obviously the Brett and the Goldberg thing kind of ended Brett's career a lot earlier than it should have.
One more thing before we close this up, and I want to, just because we're talking about super kicks, where do you land on the leg slap?
Well, I used to slap the leg plenty. It's all a matter of, Lawler would slap his leg or slap your stomach when he punched you. There's lots of slapping that's always happened with that. My leg slap when I did the kick was to stop the foot. You know what I mean? For me, that was the measuring the distance and gauging everything. And then when I slapped, it was like stop the leg under the chin. And then I had the one where I would sweep, and most times that wouldn't be a slap. The sweeping kick is the hardest one, where you have to literally come across the chin. But it is the one that people react to a lot too.
Are you disappointed with, I'll use the word bastardization of the super kick to the point where it's, unless it's Shawn Michaels doing it, is now never a finish? Because it was it was like the most spectacular finish at one point, or one of them.
All right, well, let's talk about ECW, where everybody did super kicks like 5-6 times in a match, and I had a finish. In other words,
yours was better.
Well, but if it was just a better kick and the psychology wasn't there, and whatever was in place by Raven and Paul and whoever we were involved with, it would just be another kick that looked better. Here's the deal. Whenever I went on the indie show, I would encourage every single kid on the show, do the super kick, do it 6 times. I don't care, but I would explain to them and see if they would still do it. You guys understand, you're doing it as a heat spot, and you're doing it as a double down, you're doing it as just a spot within the shine that could leads into another running the ropes. I'm going to do it finally at the finish, 1, 2, 3. What do you think the fans are going to think when they see your kick, which basically the person runs right afterwards, and then my kick that pins somebody? More times than not, the wrestlers would go, yeah, I should probably cut it out because it's not going to make me look better. It's going to make me look worse. Or if they did it, it would make me look even better. So it was kind of a teachable moment for the younger talent. But if they still went ahead and do it, I benefited because mine's better.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no wrong answer. And Shawn, now on a TV show, if you see 6 super kicks, it becomes stale. It's kind of like AEW kind of does the same jump ups, the same run-ins, the same body parts for the heat. I see that a lot, don't you?
Yeah.
They do the same exact. Now that needs to be cleaned up and kind of compartmentalized.
Well, another teachable moment that we're going to say for another show of the Stevie Richards show.
Now, Shawn Michaels should never twerk again. I would say that. And you're never going to see Stevie Richards do a Stevie twerk or twerk.
If there's a membership, you know what I mean? If there's a membership, and who knows, special request.
It's YouTube membership, not OnlyFans. Yeah. Stop it. Stop it.
No, I would insist on trousers at all times, let me tell you. On that note, right, we're going to we're going to once again encourage you to visit the Stevie Richards Show YouTube channel. The links are going to be in this description of this full interview, of course, and every clip that goes ahead, as well as the pinned comments. We're going to be plugging this thing like you wouldn't believe, and why wouldn't we as well? For goodness' sake, we're trying to encourage people, and hopefully this it probably was about 2 hours, almost dead even, has convinced you to otherwise. And even though we're still in the midst of this show, I dare say it was a fine first attempt.
Now, here's the real question. Are you still interested in doing it?
Absolutely not. I quit.
Did it again. I killed another territory. You didn't put the belt on me.
On that note, so is there anything we're going to say to close it out? Or we haven't worked out an outro of this thing. I mean, it's still WSI, I guess, but until next week. But is there any other information that we should impart to the viewers?
No, we just appreciate everybody, and we really want to welcome everybody and encourage everybody to take this ride with us as we grow, we evolve, and we try to make more fan-friendly segments and have fun with it. I think a lot of times in wrestling, and I've been guilty of this, taking it way, way, way too seriously. We're not going to make fun of it. It's not going to be a parody, but we're going to have a good time. And more than anything, I'm going to laugh at myself during some of these segments. So just enjoy the ride, and hopefully you enjoy it as a fun show that we can tightly pack together. So when you give us an hour or two, it's an hour or two well spent for you.
Absolutely. And when this interview comes out today, as this is posted, the Stevie Richards Show, as the current plan is, should have its first episode out at the same day. So watch this, as if you got this far, you've already watched it, I guess, then get straight over to the Stevie Richards Show for our first show proper as well. But I was going to do a sign-off, but sort of like when it's being posted, it makes no sense. But we'll see you over at the Stevie Richards Show YouTube channel. It will also be available on all podcast platforms, the usual ways you get them. I will sort that all out for once in advance so that it's out the same day as the YouTube. I've had so much trouble with the other ones. It's such a laborious process getting a podcast started. But once again, June 28th, links everywhere. Hope to see you there. Stevie, take us out.
Once again, it can't be said enough. I appreciate it. I know everybody's time and energy is limited. We appreciate you tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel. Click the bell to get notified. Of course, the most important part, comment below any questions. Also, we will have an email soon. So if you want to directly email those questions, but comments, interactions, likes on the video will help get it suggested and related to other people that can join the audience. So thank you guys so much. We do appreciate the support.
We the people. Oh, wait, no, that's the other one. See you later.
I stole the diploma, so I'll steal this from him too. Thanks, Dutch.
Bye, everyone.